and welcome to the India Development Debate. I'm Tamanna Inamdar, and what a show we have lined up for you. I'm joined now by Dhiraj Mathur, aviation expert, Ajay Awtaney, founder of livefromalounge.com, and of course Sudhakara Reddy, who's the president of the Air Passengers Association. Welcome to all of you and thank you for speaking with us today. Ajay, let me start by getting your take on what we've been seeing, and it's concerning because there have been such stringent SOPs, such stringent rules in place for air passengers, from thermal scans to downloading the Arogya Setu app, to getting face masks and PPEs from the airlines. All of that has been put in place. Looking at that, what is the level of concern on the news that there have been at least 5 COVID positive cases?
Hi Tamanna, thank you for having me over this evening. I think it's a known risk that everyone who will travel right now in the coronavirus era will have to live with, because what the guidelines and what the Arogya Setu app and what declarations and temperature checking only assured you is that asymptomatic passengers are being carried. It's not assuring you that passengers don't have coronavirus, and there's only one way to test before departure if passengers have coronavirus or not. That is a proper test to detect the virus. Now, unfortunately, there are no solutions around the globe at this point of time. I think Emirates tried out in the UAE, in Dubai airport, to try and do a rapid testing for a few days, but it only came back with a hit ratio of 30%. So they discontinued those tests as well. So there are no solutions at this point of time, apart from flying with the risk that there might be a carrier seated next to you of the coronavirus. And that's the risk you need to be aware of at this point of time before you take your next flight.
So there are two aspects to the risk, of course. One is for the passengers, and we'll get into that in detail in just a minute. But there's also risk to the airlines, to the entire crew and staff, to airlines which are already dealing with minimal load factors, because they can do this only at 33%, and a risk for the states where these flights are landing. Will they then end up increasing quarantine days or making their quarantine facilities or quarantine norms more stringent? Dhiraj Mathur, what's your take on the issue?
See, one, good evening and thanks for having me here. But we've just opened up, and we will learn as there will be a learning curve. And at the end of the day, of course, the crew is at risk. There's no denying that. The passengers are at risk. The people, and the destination, and in fact, not just the destination, ground staff is at risk. But the fact is that, as Ajay pointed out, there is no solution at this point in time. These are risks that you have to take. Now, it's obviously clear that only those people are going to travel who absolutely have to. And I think I can confidently say 9% is people going home. Because different states at this point of time, almost everybody who is allowed flights has mandated a 14-day quarantine, either institutional or home, or a mix of the two. So nobody who going to travel on business for a 1 or 2 day meetings and spend 16 days, 14 of which are important. So only those who have to travel will travel, which means that you're not going to have an early return to the kind of passenger load factors and the total volumes that we had 6 months back. You're not going to see that for at least a year, if not more. Number one. Number two, protocols will get refined over time as the airlines and the authorities gain experience in dealing with this. But at this point of time, there is a downside, there is that risk, and it's a risk that we have to live with, because this is the new normal. And we will have to work around this. And finally, the fact is that, if I had to travel today, I would travel by air rather than train. because I think it's probably safer to travel by air than it is by train.
Okay, interesting take there. Sudhakara Reddy, do you agree that yes, there is a risk, but passengers will just have to live with it and travel only if you absolutely have to?
Yeah, Tamanna, thanks for having me on your show. It is the SOPs drawn up are quite in great detail. I think it is definitely safer to travel by air. There is no doubt about it. Only thing that you should ensure is that no passenger tries to get off without undergoing the temperature control and things like that. Well, we found that 5 of them were found positive on arrival. How did it happen? We don't know. And they could be asymptomatic or otherwise. So, but we can't do away without flying, because flying is a part of daily life in any economy and in any country. So it is essential as far as our country is concerned. And we believe that the Minister of Civil Aviation has drawn up fairly exhaustive SOPs, and in consultation with airlines and airports, and we were also involved. I am happy to say that 5 or 6 of them that we recommended were included in the SOPs. And I think we'll have to live with the situation. And as we go along, things may improve. I know we will never go back to the January, February load factors. Right now, it is between 45 to 50% load factor. And there are still many flights being cancelled because of lack of load on a particular flight. And those who are really traveling today are those who were stuck, with various destinations and who wanted to go back to their hometown or to their parents or to their families. So we'll have to wait and see what happens after a couple of weeks, whether this kind of load factors will still be there or will it go down further, is what is, to be noted.
You're absolutely right. All of you are absolutely right. Right now, we have more questions than answers, and it's not just here in India, it's across the world. But some of the questions we need to look at is that once this first rush of passengers who was stranded essentially and want to go back home and are willing to, have a 14-day quarantine just to get home, once they are done traveling, then who's going to get on a flight? If it's not going to be business travel, leisure seems very, very far off. How sustainable is this whole industry going to be? And Ajay, I want to come to you on this part because you spoke about something very interesting about how Emirates had this experiment of rapid test kits and with a 30% hit rate, of course, it was a failure. But is that the way to go once we develop better and more accurate test kits?
See, I think, Tamanna, over a period of time, your bio passport or whatever name it's going to be called with is going to be as important as your passport. And that's something clear, I think, for the near future. People will perhaps need to be tested for the virus before they get on a plane, just like, they get yellow fever immunity certificates right now and so on and so forth. But the thing is, there's no rapid testing solution at this point of time. So coming to your question about how the loads will be, how sustainable will be aviation after this initial flush of people flying around, I think airlines are anyways running at bare minimums right now. If you look at Air India, for instance, I think they're doing one Bombay-Delhi flight a day. And, if airlines, Bombay-Delhi was the most coveted sector. Everyone wanted slots. And airlines would run 14 to 18 flights a day on the Bombay-Delhi sector. So even with one flight a day, they're not getting more than 100 passengers at this point of time when you still have some people who want to travel. And, over a period of time, this number is going to go down. Aviation airlines will have to, fly through this pandemic in the sense they will have to maintain at least minimal essential services. If you were hearing correct, for instance, some airlines are not going to, all airlines are not going to bring back all their fleet at this point of time. They're going to bring back half or 1/4 or 1/3 of the fleet. They will maintain limited services. And, I guess in a few months, the confidence will start coming back, or people will get more used to the fact that they will have to get tested before they fly, and they're living with the risk of the virus. And perhaps then it'll become more commonplace for them to be, start flying again as they would habitually have done. Apart from a little thing that changes for them, which is, perhaps they will need to get a COVID test done every time.
Your take essentially is,
yeah.
So your take essentially, Ajay, if I understand correctly, is that this is how it is right now, like it or lump it. If you want to fly, you risk traveling in an enclosed space with someone who may be an asymptomatic COVID positive person. That's just the risk that you carry, and you have to weigh that in before you decide to take a flight.
Yes, and the fact that airlines will have to also continue to fly through this at this point of time, and for a few months. After that, I hope the loads start coming back as passenger confidence starts coming back in how life is at the moment.
Mr. Mathur, let me get your take on the policy side of things. Now, in the initial period, the initial couple of days, we saw quite a bit of confusion about which, states would have what level of quarantine. SOPs were being tweaked and retweaked at the state level till pretty much the last minute. That caused flight cancellations, and hopefully that should all sort itself out as we move forward. But with the COVID question in the mix, that despite all the checks and balances, you could have asymptomatic COVID positive people flying and entering the state. Do you see states making their quarantine requirements more stringent in the days to come?
So, you see, the key here is testing. I mean, before taking your question directly, let me just say one more thing. That, of course, as far as dealing with this this pandemic, there are three aspects to it. There's the testing aspect, there's the vaccine, and then, of course, there's the treatment. And there are three broad buckets under which a lot of work is being done by the government in India and across the world. So as far as our particular situation is concerned, and there's work being done by the IITs and so on, we read about so back that IIT Delhi has come up with a very cheap testing kit. So I potentially see a situation where we will probably need to get tested or have a certificate that we've been tested and are clear before we fly. I don't rule that out, and I think that is a very distinct possibility. Now, once that is in place, once the testing mechanism is further refined or improved, we have faster, we have testing kits that can deliver on the spot something in between just a thermal scanning and a full-blown test, which takes a couple of days to get the results in. Once we have something of that nature, I think we will have a situation where everyone will have the same policy. In the interim, we have this situation where different states have different policies and so on. I will imagine that with the, I wouldn't necessarily use the word intervention, but with the advisement of the government of India, this issue should get ironed out in the coming week or so, or 10 days, or maybe more, where we can arrive at a consensus among the states to have a common set of, a common SOP, unless there is some very, very unique situation somewhere. But I would imagine that eventually we will arrive at a situation where there will be a common set of SOPs across the country, so that, at least we don't have this. Of course, it's another matter, as you just said earlier, as to how many people are going to fly. Because look, we had a very strict lockdown and we shut down flights some in March itself. But the US didn't shut down domestic flights. But there was it's another matter that hardly anyone traveled. And I think we will probably have something quite similar out here, that there won't be that very many people traveling, at least in the immediate short term, during which time I would hope that
with all due
the
respect, the
SOPs
US
will
is a
begin.
bad example. The US is a bad example on anything, on all matters COVID, considering they've had 100,000 plus deaths. So, the US example is not one that flies in any case. No one wants an outcome like they've had. So perhaps it was right to keep, flights grounded for all of these days. We needed it.
No, that's not what I was saying. That's not what I was saying. What I'm saying is that once this initial surge of traffic of people coming home subsides, we're not going to see very many people traveling. So we will have a situation where flights are sort of theoretically available, but there won't be any passengers. That's the point I was making. So, but coming back to your question was, what's the
Yes.
policy confusion? I think in the short term, that's going to get sorted out with the intervention of the government of India. And in the medium term, I would imagine that we will come up with a testing solution that is more accurate than thermal scanning, and a sort of a compromise between that and a full-blown test.
Absolutely. The rapid test kits or this in between testing solution that Mr. Mathur is speaking about is crucial, not just in the context of air travel. Actually, it's going to be the new way, isn't it? Before you get into work or into any kind of a public space, it would be great if you have a rapid test, but we're some time away from that. In the meantime, Mr. Reddy, from the passenger's point of view, do you think it's very crucial now to have clarity and standard SOPs, among states? The last few days, and this is in fact the first real response that we've seen, has been quite chaotic for passengers. We've had last minute cancellations, the states where the flights are landing having differing rules on how long quarantine is, and now to top it all, people do know that there is a possibility that they're traveling with an asymptomatic COVID positive person.
You're 100% right, but let me assure you that the Government of India, Ministry of Civil Aviation, while drafting the SOPs, should have taken the states on board. That is the unfortunate thing that did not happen. And what happened, everything was falling in line around 8 p.m. on Sunday evening when the flights are supposed to take off on Monday morning. So that is where the gap was, and because of which there were a lot of changes in the last minute and flights didn't take off. And as my earlier speaker said, it's a matter of time. Maybe in another week or two, things will settle down and every state will fall in line and make people understand that they are not here to punish air travelers by quarantine and what have you. So I suppose things will smoothen out very soon. And once it happens, then, air travel will become a more comfortable thing than what it is now, under the present circumstances. But still, I don't see it going back to even 50% load factors in another 2 to 3 months from now, because we have all begun to live with the new normal. And COVID is not going to disappear overnight. It's not going to be around us. We'll have to live with it. And if we are living with it, we have to take the precautions that are required to be taken by every passenger or every citizen. So that is going to be the new normal. And we must accept that as a fact of life. If we do, then things will fall in line.
Absolutely. Absolutely, and at the same time, we have to find a way to keep all of us safe and streamline our processes even better. If there is a way sooner than later to know if you're COVID negative before taking a flight, that would be a breakthrough that actually the world desperately needs. I want to thank all of you all for joining us on the first big discussion this evening.